Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Marco Clark, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Richard Wright Schools. Today, we are having our first annual RWS Talk. The gentleman today that you're going to spend your time with is a graduating senior, Mr. Parrish Rembert.
Well, hello, and I just want to thank you all for coming to hear me speak. But before I actually get into the paper, I just want to talk about, someone who inspires me. Probably a good reason and motivation for most of the things I do and most of the things I think. Nikola Tesla was a Croatian-born man who I feel is one of the most genius men of our time. I think that, personally, the things that he has thought are more important than the things that he has done. In the realm of ideas, he's made the Tesla coil obviously a standout in most media, but in practical society, he made the basis for alternating current power. The basis of power that we use every day. Most things use alternating current power, though the power that is sent through the lines is direct current. The reason why we have breakers and other things like that is because most devices prefer to run on alternating current. But the reason why I find Tesla such an ideological mentor to me is because of what he thought. He wasn't just an inventor, he was an idealist, a futurist. He thought of a future where every man would have access to the powers of electricity, and he was right. Though it wasn't just that, the things that he thought and the ideas that he had. The reason of the Tesla coil was Tesla wanted to make towers, massive towers that would reach up into the sky and almost, in a way, broadcast electricity through the atmosphere so that every place in every part of the world would have access to electricity. Looking at the world now, we do have massive towers, and they aren't broadcasting electricity, but a different type of signal, radio signals. We have radio towers, wireless communications towers, we have satellites. And the reason why I like to think of Tesla when I'm thinking of something big is because even if he didn't achieve what he wanted to in his lifetime, the ideas that he put out in the world shaped the future that we live in. And I want to shape the future in a similar way. Even if I can't achieve the things that I want, I at least want the fact that I wanted these things to happen to have some effect on the world. Now, when I walk up here to this stage, or when I got asked to do this, I felt nervous. Now I feel a lot more joy. And that is a mental health, not an issue, but just a facet of mental health. That's the way the brain works. A lot of the times, nerves are a normal reaction. It's your body getting you ready. If we're thinking evolutionarily, it's your body preparing you to either be able to fight something or run away. But now, it's our body preparing us to get our game face on, get ready, in a way. And that is just a small amount of what mental health really is. Mental health is a lot like physical health. The same way where if you accidentally stub your toe, you'll know to be more careful when walking. If you feel a bit nervous, you'll know to absolutely prepare for whatever circumstances may happen. Mental health and physical health are a lot more intertwined than a lot of people like to think. Because on a way where you can see if there's something wrong with your physical health, you may not be able to see what's causing it, but most issues, they have physical signifiers. Like if you have a cold, you'll be coughing and sneezing and you'll feel something in your head. It's the same way for mental issues. People with ADHD, a lot of the time can not seem to just grasp and focus on one topic, or even sometimes hyper-focus on a specific topic for days, months, sometimes even years. Mental health and physical health are connected by the fact that we are human. And as humans, we constantly grow and evolve. There is a psychological I guess theorem would be the word. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's in the form of a pyramid, and it's basically what humans need in the importance. The base levels are things like food, water, security. A little bit higher than that is a sense of safety, fulfillment, things like that. And as humans, we've been slowly filling up that hierarchy of needs. Most humans in developed countries, at the very least, have access to food, have access to clean drinking water and bathing water, have access to some form of permanent or temporary shelter. And just as that, most humans have families, they have friends, or at least acquaintances that they can be around, a sense of community, a sense of family, a sense of friendship. Those are two basic needs, the first two totems on the tower. Another thing that most humans have are jobs, dreams, things they do to fulfill their wants. That's the third. But now, humans are bred to look more introspectively. While there has always been art, there has always been culture, and for a long time there has been philosophy, philosophy for most of human history has been more of a job, being paid to think, or being allowed to live to think. That is what philosophers did, which puts them a lot more on the third rank. But now, in our society where you can have a job and still have free time, a lot more people, not just philosophers, are doing thinking, pushing us to the fourth level. We are wondering about ourselves and about what we may need that is not physically evident. Because if someone doesn't have to constantly worry about hunger, they will worry about how much they eat, about what they eat. That is the very basis for mental health. Because if we really think about it, we have only barely become good enough at medicine that most humans don't have to worry about death from a simple cut. Penicillin, the wonder drug, the reason why we have found so many cures to so many common ailments, was only first synthesized in the 1940s. Funnily enough, the 1940s was also the decade when Tesla died. But also, things like hand washing, a common practice that even non-doctors should do on a daily basis before you eat, before anything enters your body, is very recent, only about 130 years old. These common things are why only now we have any sort of basis on health. And now that we are starting to master our physical health, we are starting to look into our mental health. And that is what I wish to talk to you about. In our modern day, in our modern age, we have solved many physical problems, but we have left gaps where we let certain things fall through. Things that they may not hurt us physically, but they will affect us deep inside. There are a myriad of problems facing people with issues, especially mental health issues in the modern day, and that is what I would like to talk about. Firstly, I would like to address a topic, a reason why people don't like talking about mental health. There's a sort of stigma against mental health. Some stigma are worse than others. There are some simple baseline stigmas, like people with ADHD or on the autistic spectrum disorder. Some people just think they could get over it, telling a person with depression to just get over it and be happy, a person with ADHD to just focus. It's not how it works fundamentally. It's not an inability to focus. It's something fundamental in their brains that is almost wired in an undescribable way. It would be like telling a person with one leg to just grow their leg back. That's not how the human body works, and that's not how the mind of someone with a mental health disorder works. Depression, for instance. Depression isn't an inability to feel happy, it's an inability to feel. It's a wavering emptiness, something that feels hollow, like a pit that even though you try to climb, you can't find your way out of. It's a darkness that no matter how bright the lights from outside shine, the darkness still surrounds you unendingly. That is because someone with depression has had a fundamental change in their brain, a change related to trauma. Now, trauma is a big word with lots of heavy baggage. People think of trauma as post-traumatic stress disorder. People who have gone to war and seen others die and they come back fundamentally different, because who could survive something like that and still be normal? But what we don't realize is there are layers of trauma. There are layers in many things in life, and it is not so simple as you do or you don't. There are three types of trauma, like there are three types of stress. There's good stress. Like I said, when I came here, I felt nervous, I felt anxious, but now I feel excited, I feel ready to talk. That is good stress. That is stress that makes me prepare, that makes me feel fulfilled after. It may start as stress, but it ends as enjoyment, fulfillment, a good memory. And that is fundamentally what trauma is. Trauma is a form of core memory that sticks to you and fundamentally influences the person you become. There is no exact good trauma, but there is a more fundamental form of trauma. Some may just call it core memories. That is a way that it has been personified in the media. But those core memories are what build you as a person, and they are a form of trauma. Not all good, not all bad, but simply there. Then there is light trauma. Now, I will state this now. No trauma can simply be gotten over. It fundamentally changes your brain. Your brain is not a static lump of tissue. Just like how every single day you go on a walk, you cause micro tears in your muscles that cause them to be rebuilt. The exact same thing happens in your brain. With every thought you make, with every memory you formulate, it causes a slight change, a slight difference. A hormonal shift, a shift in simply the construction of your brain, it causes those changes that cannot simply be erased. They are permanent. And light trauma, as it is called, are those negative changes that can cause things like depression that may not be permanent and may be treatable, but will permanently have some sort of change on the way the person thinks. And severe trauma is the trauma most well known as, well, trauma. It is PTSD. It is seeing a house burn down and personally having a fear of smoke. Permanently, when you smell smoke, you only think of fire. You only get flashbacks of what happened and what you have lost. That is severe trauma. And while, yes, severe trauma is severe, and it is good that it's been talked about how much it has been, it's not the only form of trauma. And thinking it as the only form of trauma is one of the major roadblocks in the ideals of mental health. As someone with depression may have suffered some form of light trauma that isn't permanent enough to get them some worse disorder, it's not that it can be simply ignored. Trauma is trauma. That person cannot feel happiness, but they don't feel a base sadness. They feel an emptiness inside themselves, which can't be cured with any pill. That is why so many drugs that are sent to cure mental health have suicidal thoughts and ideations as a side effect. The way those drugs work are by blocking a part of your brain. And I'm not saying that they are bad. They have been tested and they can help some people, but other people, people that may not like the feeling of who they fundamentally are inside being changed, may lash out at their own selves, because unlike a physical injury, there is no one or no thing to blame. It's only themselves and their internal feelings. That is a deep part of stigma. A lot of mental health stigma comes from your own personal feelings. It comes from you inside. You can't blame anyone else for the ways you feel. Someone with autistic spectrum disorder may wonder why they can't be like anyone else. And other people may see them as weird. They may see them as outside of the ordinary, which causes them to have a bad view on the person, and the person to have a bad view on themselves internally. It's something of a spiral that only gets worse for everyone around and involved in it. Things like ADHD. A lot of people just say they should just focus. You should have done this by now. But someone with ADHD, the way ADHD works is a fundamental imbalance in the dopamine receptors of your brain. Dopamine is the chemical most widely shown for happiness. It brings feelings of joy, fulfillment. It's what makes your body want to do things. Having dopamine be blocked like that means that no matter how fun the task may have been for you, it won't feel good to you anymore. It could have been your favorite thing in the entire world, but now you can't stand doing it because fundamentally your brain cannot formulate happiness on that topic. That is why people with ADHD can so quickly flip from one thing to another, and why, when they do find that one thing that is unblocked, they're so likely to hyperfixate on it, because it is sometimes the one thing in life that can bring them recreational joy. And that is another reason why they can't focus. It has no fulfillment to them. It may be very important, but to them, their brain registers it as nothing because they get no chemical signal from it. It's a fundamental problem. And it causes people with ADHD to have a bad rap as unreliable. It causes them to have a bad rap as people who can't focus. They can't be taught, is what a lot of people with ADHD have been told. It's that causes the stigma, and it's the stigma that causes people to not want to talk about mental health. A lot of the time, people with mental health weren't even seen as humans, simply people in the bodies of humans with these bags of symptoms that has fundamentally changed their brains so much, they can't be classified as the same as what a normal human was seen as. That's the reason why asylums were so often testing grounds for one thing or another. It's the fact that fundamentally they weren't seen as people, because on a literal sense they weren't. They did not have the same brain as the average human, but no human would share the same brain ever. That's the reason why these people with such mental health problems, they are still people. They still are humans, fundamentally. The fact that their brain is different is the reason why. And there are causes of their brains being different. You're not always born with a mental health problem, just like how you're not always born with a physical health problem. You can't catch mental health. It develops inside of you, growing almost as a part of you. Instead of growing in the soil like a plant would, it grows in your thoughts. And those thoughts grow into actions, and those actions become fundamental parts of your personality. Stress and stress-related disorders, like anxiety disorder, are one of the most common forms of mental health disorder, especially now. And the reason why that is because, as I said, some people with mental health problems weren't seen as humans, so why would anyone focus on building a world for them, not knowing anyone can get some mental health problems? Not every mental health problem is one that's been born with. That is why there has been such a sudden rise in people who have said that they have a form of anxiety disorder, even chronic anxiety disorders. And it's not that they didn't exist, it's just that in the past, they wouldn't have told anyone. They would have been feared being viewed as different, and even if they did tell someone, the world wouldn't have changed for them. It is only now that we are more enlightened as a society that we see that these people are still people and they deserve the rights that all people deserve. So it is evidently true that they should also have rights. That is the reason why that people with stress disorders have different things that they can use to help themselves, especially with 2020, the COVID pandemic. It had a lot of unseen for side effects. There was a lockdown, and that lockdown caused people to only be with themselves, close family or friends, or online spaces. And in these spaces, there was no society to cater to. There was no people to judge. It was simply them. And while, yes, there were still some people that had to be out and about, those people were mostly alone. It was the essential workers, it was the doctors, it was the nurses. And when they weren't actively serving, they were mostly alone in a world that had been used to being so full of people. It is because of that post-2020, so many people have discovered new things about themselves. It is because of that so many people have realized the fact that they also have mental health issues. And it's not just that, it's the fact that this world wasn't built for people with mental health issues. And I'm not saying that it should be. I'm saying that the same way a wheelchair ramp can be added to a building to help with someone who has problems with walking, spaces can be made to help people who have mental problems. Some people with ADHD, like I said before, cannot focus at all. But there are ways that you can help them focus. The way that I've been talking has been mostly negative, but that doesn't mean that there hasn't been positive. It just means that so far it's been mostly negative. Just like how in the past, a common cold or flu would most likely be fatal. Now, most of the time, the conversation around mental health and ideations of thoughts are mostly negative. That doesn't mean it can't change. The same way things like penicillin were developed, the same way we are discovering effective treatments for mental health disorders, and the same way we are looking more into the more severe disorders. If before someone had said they had psychopathy or schizophrenia, those are the two, what is commonly seen as the worst, especially in media portrayals, showing them as subhuman sometimes. Now we understand they are still human. Their brains are different, and they can be helped, not cured. Mental health issues are not diseases. There is no drug that you can take to cure them. It is simply by letting them realize that the way they think is not the way all humans think, and letting other people know they are different fundamentally, and they cannot physically help themselves with some of their ideas. It's one of the ways to show that they are still human and they can be fixed. And that's mainly the reason why I wanted to talk today. Mental health issues are so prevalent in society now that it seems like it came out of nowhere, but it hasn't come out of nowhere. It's simply the fact that now we're able to see them for what they really are. They're still people, they're just people with problems. And now that we can see those problems, we can help people with those problems. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you. Thank you.